Bum bum bum. Okay, so we've officially reached the conclusion of the Summer of John Green, which means I have read all of his novels, excluding his part in the book Let It Snow, or whatever it's called, because I'm not going to do that. I just wanted to read the novels. So, this is the order that I read them in. I started with his newest novel, and arguably most popular, The Fault in Our Stars, because everyone was talking about it and how good it was and stuff. And I actually really liked this book. It was really good, and it's not something I usually go in for. I don't really read young adult. I'm a little bit above that age group, but it was actually really good. It was highly entertaining. I really enjoyed it. Did a review on that. And after reading that, I felt like going back and reading um, his other stuff. So I bought all of them at once so that I would just get out of the way, and so I could read them back to back. And then I read Looking for Alaska, which is his first novel, and really enjoyed it. Um, it was really good. And then I read An Abundance of Catherines, which was his second novel. Really enjoyed that one too, even more than Looking for Alaska. And then I read Paper Towns, which is his third novel, and I really enjoyed this one. And then I read Will Grayson, which is the fourth and was written with David Levithan. And that's the fourth novel. And then comes The Fault in Our Stars, which I read first. So, to wrap this up, some of the things about John Green that are criticisms are, one, that his main characters, are usually very similar. So similar that you couldn't distinguish them apart. Partly true, they are pretty similar. I mean, you have, I don't remember his real name, Pudge, from Looking for Alaska, who's kind of an introvert, doesn't have very many friends, but is really smart. Kind of skinny, nerdy kid. Then you have Colin, who's a child prodigy and not very smart, or is very smart but doesn't have very many friends. Has like one good friend, which is similar to Pudge. He has a couple, but it's a small group that he meets later on. And then you have Quentin or Q from Paper Towns, who is his intelligence is brought up the least, actually. He's not a child prodigy like Colin, and he's not in a super rigorous academic setting like Pudge. So, I don't know. But you still get the sense, because John Green's writing is fairly smart, that he is a smart kid. Who also doesn't have a ton of friends. Kind of nerdy, but has a few really solid friends. Will Grayson, at least John Green's Will Grayson, doesn't have very many friends, pretty smart, and nerdy. And then the one exception would be The Fault in Our Stars. Hazel, she does fit some of the things, kind of nerdy, doesn't have very many friends, but at the same time, she's also a girl, and she has cancer, so that changes things a little bit. A lot of the plots are very similar in like a basic kind of way, but that's going to be true because the genre in which he's writing relies on some kind of journey into adulthood or coming to terms with maturity or different aspects of growing up. So, I mean, yeah, there are going to be similar things. It's the details that matter, and they're fairly different. So people say that his writing is very formulaic, and in certain aspects it is. In different aspects, the stories stand alone, and they paint very vivid pictures that could be really important to a young reader, and I think are very vivid, and that's why he's so popular and has such a strong following. I feel like you don't necessarily need to read all of his work, but if you read one and it really resonated with you, pick your favorite one And that could be a classic book for you, especially if you read it as a young person. And I imagine if I had read Paper Towns when I was 13 or something, I don't even think it was out yet. Hold on. That might have been impossible. When were you published, Paper Towns? 2008. Yeah. I wasn't 13. 2008. Okay. So, it might not have helped so much. I would have been 17 in 2008. So, yeah. But if I would have read it when I was like 13, 14, I mean, it really would have been very eye-opening for me, and would have been one of those books that I carried around for the future. It still is a very good book, and did have a lot of really interesting concepts that I enjoy now. Um, so I think that although John Green isn't, Charles Dickens, he's not Ernest Hemingway, he's not going to be a writer that is celebrated 100 years after his time. He is a very smart, it's seemingly genuine, intelligent guy who writes stories to I think, help people and to shed light on certain aspects of being young. And that's an important role to play. So I think they're good, and they're good. And if you're young, you should read them, and if you're not young, you should go ahead and read them if they sound interesting, because there is enough nuance and subtlety and references to keep you engaged. So let me rank arbitrarily, because it's super subjective, my rankings of his books, if it matters to you at all. The one I would suggest the most highly, and the one I like the most, Paper Towns. Really, really good. I enjoyed this one the most. I imagine this might be one that I'll go back and revisit. Definitely. For sure. The next one would be The Fault in Our Stars, and this was pretty close with Paper Towns. Paper Towns, with its talk of mirroring and other stuff, edged out a little bit more than the romance. And the way this one ends, I'm not a huge fan of. Not because it's sad, but just some of the stuff that goes on in the end. But this one was really good as well. I'll probably go back and revisit this. Then it would be An Abundance of Catherines. I've heard a lot of people say they don't like this, who are John Green fans, or this was their least favorite. I really liked this one. I thought it was really funny. I enjoyed Colin. I enjoyed the banter. I loved his friend. And I thought this one did the best with explaining why this teenager understands all these literary references and historical references, because he's a child prodigy. That makes the most sense. But this was also very good. Then I would go with Looking for Alaska. I know this is probably his second most popular, and this one won an award, the Prince Award, and is a New York Times bestseller. It was good. I have my issues with it. I thought the structure was interesting. The countdown to an event and then the countdown away. There were some questions, some plot holes that didn't make a lot of sense. And some of it was good, but not my favorite. And then my least favorite, and the one I would say, like, it's good, but you don't, if you're not really big on John Green, I wouldn't pick this one up, is Will Grayson, Will Grayson. Not that there's anything particularly bad, I just found by the end I'd kind of lost interest in the story, and it was just kind of like, okay, I'm ready for this to be over. So anyway, that is the summer of John Green. Please feel free to comment and let me know what you think, or if I'm completely wrong, I would like to know. So anyway, as always, have a good life and happy reading.